Okay, so we're going to start exploring the different lights and different functionality of lights in Solaris. And some of this functionality is not available in the regular lights in the object context in Houdini. So this is specific to Solaris. I mean, Solaris is meant to be a lighting operator or SLOPs and codename Solaris, I guess. But that is the objective of this, mostly of this context. So there are some pretty nice and good functionality about lights that just makes it way simpler to just position lights and get the lights to do exactly what you want really quickly. So I have a very simple scene here with some elements on the table. We're gonna just light this a little bit, playing with our lights that we're going to be having here. The scene, you can see, is very simple. I have all the objects just as USD objects merged into one, and I have a camera, and that's it. There's nothing special happening here. So we're going to create a light, and creating lights in Solaris is very simple because since Solaris is basically I guess a template for multiple renderers, the way it works is that it's very generalized. So there's very simple nodes or very little nodes. There's no light specific for RenderMan or Karma or something else. So every light tries to be as generic as possible to work with every single renderer. There are specific properties for each of the renderers if they are needed, but in essence the nodes are pretty simple and generic for every renderer. So if we create a light here, you can see if I search for light, we have just basically one light, three lights. There's a light, a distant light, which it's also inside the light, and a dome light, and so that's basically it. So let's create the light. Also, you can create lights in the from the shelf here if you want to do it that way. But I just really don't think it's necessary. But if you're used to that, you can do it that way. You can see here in the point type is there's basically all the lights you need. A cylinder, distant. Yeah, as I said, distant is here. If you can just want to create the light, is basically contains all the other lights. The rectangle, sphere, and everything is here. I guess the tone light. Let me use this. Let me create a dome light. Dome light, it's a little bit different. Doesn't have any other parameters. This is specific for this, and it has like a texture for putting any environment light and stuff like that. But that's basically all you need. And most of the time, what I use is just the light with this light being as a rectangle light, which is like what we called before an air light. And that's most of the time that's all I need because it's more like a soft light in reality, and I use this a lot if I need to have another type of light like a spotlight or stuff like that. I do it mostly with fake it with a rectangle or a sphere, but that's basically what I do. I mean, you would have different needs. So it's important to know there in Solaris that nodes have to be connected. Doesn't work like in the object context. Like if this light, I have it here, you can see it's not affecting the scene at all because these lights are basically not calculated. They have to be part of the graph here. If we don't have them as the graph, and that goes for all nodes, if they are not connected, they're not calculated. Also, if they are connected, but your displays here, this is not being calculated really. So if I connect that and display that light, you can see now there's some light, and my light is below here, which at the moment is a rectangle light. You can see there it is. But again, this has to be connected. It's something that is different from the object context. In object context, you don't have to connect them. You just create them and they illuminate all the scene by default. In this case, you don't. They don't. You have to connect them. Okay, so you can see this dome light is not affecting this. This light, it is. And that's it. I mean, we will see how to connect the lights. You can organize lights however you want. In this case, you can see you can do it like I did with this camera. Just put it on its own branch here and connect it with a sub layer. And you can do the same thing with lights, or even connect them here in this sub layer as well. And that will be your light, your lighting layer. Okay, so this light, as I mentioned, is very generic. But you can see here, there's in the properties here, you can see there is the types, as we mentioned, the simple transform from every single object that has a transform. And then there's the properties, the actual properties of the light, right? So we have the width for this specific light. This one is going to change for other lights, of course. So not every light has width and height. All lights would have exposure intensity, color, if you want to connect the texture, and all these things that you have, the diffuse, multiplier, specular stuff. The shaping here, like I said, if you want to fake a spotlight, you can do it with this, which again doesn't exist in this list, but you can fake it with this parameter here. You have the angle and all that stuff for a spotlight. You can see there the spot, and you can make it soft and all those good things that you like from spotlights, right? So if you want a spotlight, but still want a spotlight, you can do it here. You can have focus, which is similar to spotlight, but just with actually this is taking the settings for the spotlight, I think. Focus is a way to focus an area light. I don't think it's showing here, but it should show in the render. Or if you want an IES light, you can plug it here as well. Settings for the shadow, and then there is this karma specific section, which if you have other renderers, I don't have any other renderers loaded at the moment, but if you have RenderMan, Redshift, Arnold, Solaris, Octane, or other renderers would have their own tabs if they have specific parameters for lights. Okay, so they will be here, and you can override them in this section. I can see it, but right now they are disabled. If you want to enable them, you change this drop down here to the left, and then you can just send it for example to set or create, like you can see in the other ones here, set or create, and then you can set that parameter. If you do nothing, the parameter is not being considered. Okay, so you can see that you can move the light in the viewport. You can change your parameters as always, but there's something really cool here in the viewport. If you go back to the viewport, you can see here it's kind of a little bit hidden, but you have some buttons here for specular, diffuse, and shadow, keep orientation, keep brightness. But I think the coolest thing is to just enable the help, which you can see here at the bottom says press H to show help, and if you press H, you get this really nice help, and you can see you can press Shift S for toggle specular mode, Shift D to toggle diffuse mode, and Shift F to toggle shadow mode, Shift T to toggle look at mode, Control drag to adjust light distance, Control Shift drag to adjust light brightness, and B to enter the resize mode. So let's start with the bottom one, which is B, which is going to be, I think, going to work for everyone. So if you press B, you can see you can toggle that on and off, right? Well, there's a few things happening there. If I press 1, I go to this, which is says mode resize, and drag horizontally to modify the light. So if I drag, you can see it's dragging, is changing the width. If I click again, it's gonna, if I press B again, you can see now it's changing the height. Okay, and you can see you have a height here and the increment that you are changing here. Sadly, the increment has to be changed with the scroll wheel of your mouse, and I use generally a tablet, and it's a little bit weird because you have to be pressing the left click button and then scroll to change the height increment. You have to press both buttons. You have to press the left button and then scroll down. It doesn't work if you just scroll. But now if I have that really small, I can just use my tablet to have really small control. I wish this number would just stay all the time like that, but at the moment it just resets. So you can see I can do that. I can have this. It resets when you go out of the light and come back, sadly. See, now the value is 1 again, which is not a big problem. You can just put it down again. All right, so you have the help for that. Let's just go out of show help. Let's go out of that mode, and you can do that. And then if you want to adjust the light brightness, is the same. Control Shift, press Control Shift, and then you can do the change the intensity just by dragging, which is really nice. One thing that I want to mention is that I do not like to change the intensity value. So if we go here to the base properties, you can see I was modifying this intensity. You can see it's happening there while I drag. It's changing it. I don't like to change the intensity. I always work with the exposure, and you might be used to that as well. And it's recommended that you change the exposure. Most people like to use the exposure because it's more like real light would work, right? So that's great because if you want to use the exposure, it's fine. You can just right click, and there's properties for this as well. So apart from the menu that you have here, if you right click, you have right click here on the light, on top of the light, sorry, you have some properties that you can set here. Especially the one we want is the exposure here variant. So it says the brightness variant is gonna control what? The exposure or the intensity. And I always want to have change the exposure. And now when I Control Shift drag, you can see it's saying that it's adjusting the exposure now, and that's what I want. That's what I want all the time. Most of the time I just want to leave my intensity to 1 and then change my exposure. And you might be used to do that as well. So there you go. Although it's kind of weird because the exposure, you can see it's changing in 0.1 intervals, although it says the increment is 1. Kind of weird. Might be a little bit thing to work on there, but it works, right? So it's just control dragging. You can change the exposure, which is really useful if you're just looking through your camera. I have a camera here that I set up, and you want to change the exposure without going here or getting out of your flow here in the viewport. You can do that really quickly, and it's just very artistic and interactive. So the other thing we can do here is also adjust light distance with just control dragging. And if you control drag, you can see I'm going to move the light along its normal, basically, or generally it's going to be along the Z axis. So in this case, this light's going back and forth. Okay, so now other thing that I can do is, let me change to transform mode. It's good and all to move lights like this. Let me make this light a little bit smaller. I'm going to make it smaller here. Let's just make it like 0.5 and 0.5. It's cool to have lights moving around and all the stuff, but Solaris has all these really cool modes here that you can use, and you can toggle them with these buttons here or with the shortcuts that you have here in the viewport. So I can press Shift S, and now you can see I'm on specular mode. It says click to place a specular highlight, and this is pretty cool because I can actually click on the scene, and that the specular highlight is going to be there wherever my mouse is. I can drag, and you can see if I want to have this little pepper specular here exactly in that area, I can just position it there. And this is great because when you're lighting stuff and your client says I want a specular highlight exactly on top of this bottle right here, you can just get it really quickly there. It's just like super cool, magical really. It's like, yeah, I want to this light to like this pepper right here. Of course, you're gonna be when you're using this, you're gonna be most of the time in camera mode or in camera view, and just placing your highlight wherever you want it. If you want to have specular light here, lighting this rim of this pepper. You can do that really quickly, and it's just great. I mean, it's just amazing how this works. And you can press control and drag to move this distance closer to that area if you want to, like this, right? I didn't talk about control drag before, but yeah, you can control drag to adjust like distance. Once you have the light placed like this, you can do anytime, just put the highlight whatever you want it, and then put the light closer, move the light closer or further away just by control dragging. Changes the brightness anytime, but just control shift if you want more brightness, whatever that is placed, and change the size as well. If you want to click press B and B again, change the size of it. I mean, it's pretty cool. You can do that all while being in the specular mode. You don't have to get out of that. Those settings you can change anytime. And then if you press Shift S again, you get out of specular mode. And the other modes are going to be very similar. For example, now if we press Shift D to go to diffuse mode, now you can see I have my specular here, and my line here, or my guide that it's pointing towards the object, it's now blue. It was red before, which is defining this by this diffuse. I guess it's a color coded for specular is going to be red and diffuse is going to be blue. If you click somewhere, you can see it's not placing exactly the specular there. It's actually placing, making that area lit by this light. You can see the specular is not exactly in this rim, which is where I'm clicking, but that light is lighting exactly that area, right? So if you want to have the light is falling, specifically in, let's say, this area where this little pepper here is, that is going to be how you place the light. If you want to say, place a light over here on the back really quickly, you can do that pretty quickly with that. I mean, that was really quick, just clicking, dragging, and maybe lighting this cup here like that, or putting it maybe from the top, or just putting it here, just having the light going coming from the top completely, just clicking on the table, that will get you there. Also, if I click on this pepper, you can see the specular is not precisely there. It's been the light is being lit to that area, which is basically getting the diffuse. Again, if I click, if I press Shift S and click here, you can see that's pretty different. It's not that it's lighting all this area; it's just making the light, positioning the light so it reflects on this area. So the specular is there, exactly there. Doesn't really matter if this area is lit or not, but with diffuse, if you want to light this area specifically, now that area is being lit, right? So it's very different. One is considered what the light is lighting, and the other one is considering what the specular is being placed exactly. So yeah, that's very different. So let's turn off diffuse. Now for shadow mode, it's a little bit different because shadows have an angle. So if we press Shift F to go to shadow mode, it says click to place pivot, and hold Shift and click to place target. So if we click, let's say we click here on top of the bottle cap here, and then we shift drag down here, you can see now our light, it's making a line from this all the way down here. So I'm shift dragging here to move, I guess, the destination. Let me turn on shadows here so you can see that we're controlling the shadows, where the shadows fall now. So this is basically like at the direction that I wanted my shadows. I click first where my pivot would be, and then I click where my destination or my angle would be for those shadows right there. So let's go out of here. So again, this is very, very cool. If you want to have a specific shadow falling in a specific direction, like in this case, let's say we want a shadow going in this direction or a smaller shadow, you can really quickly get your shadows exactly where you want them. If I wanted to be like clicking from here and getting my shadows, I guess, fall in this direction, you can do that. If you imagine you have like an architectural scene where you want your shadows going in a very specific direction. You can just do this super quickly. So clicking puts the pivot, and then shift dragging places the target, and it just makes it like a line where the shadows are going to be pointing at. So it's pretty nice. Of course, since this is 3D, not all shadows are pointing in this direction, right? Because this light is here. But if you want to have your shadows all pointing in one direction, well, you can press Ctrl and drag it further away. So the light is, it's farther away. It's not. So now you can see my light is really far away over there. Now my shadows are falling in this direction since it's farther away. And now I can have all my shadows be doing that, right? And it's sometimes going all the way to dark because there's a wall behind here, and sometimes it's just casting a big shadow there. But yeah, you can do that. You can have that really, really nice shadow. If you want to have the shadows to the other side, that's it. Really quickly again, you don't have to go out and move this light and position it correctly. Now you can just control it here, close to your scene, even in camera. Tweak your shadows a little bit if you want to. Oh, I just want my shadows to move a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. Just do it really quickly with this, and this is gonna work with every single type of shadow of light, of course, that is in a way directional, like the rectangle. And look at mode is very similar. So if we press Shift T to look at mode, you can see just click and it's gonna look at that in that direction, but it's not rotating the light. So you can see if I want to this light wherever it is positioned, just to look at this cactus here, you can see I place it there and the light is there. I can make the light come closer. Make the light, if I can make the light come closer to this, and you can see it's just moving the light. You can see it's just positioning the light so it looks at that object. You can see sometimes it is rotating the light in certain directions. So I'm just doing the wrong thing there. But yeah, you can see I can look at this object. If I have the light exactly where I want it to be, and I don't want to be, I want it to be closer. If I don't want the light to move much from where it's coming, but just focus on this little plate of food, there you go. You just click on it and that's it. It just looks at that. It's pretty simple, but it's very useful again, because if you're in camera and your light is just way out in the distance and you don't have to figure the rotation that it has to have, you just move it and it just looks at that object, which is pretty useful. So let's get out of look at mode, Shift T to get out of there. And that's it for lights, for those types of lights. The dome light doesn't have any of that, because dome light is just a global object that is just illuminating from, it's basically a dome, right? Let's just try to do a little bit like we have like a window lighting. So we have this light here. I want my light to come from, let's say, from this side over here. So to do that, let's use specular mode first, and then let's make it point to this. You can see that kind of gives me what I want, the light coming from this direction. But let's try diffuse. I'm just gonna use one light right now, but you can use several lights if you want. Also, I was mentioning that, let me go out of camera, and sometimes you can see that if I click here, the light is being rotated and moved and positioned in all ways to match whatever I'm clicking on, in this case for diffuse, right? If you don't want to, or if you want to keep the brightness or the orientation of the light, you have these toggles right here. You can see keep orientation. it's not gonna rotate the light as much, or actually not at all. You can see it's being positioned all over the place, but it keeps the orientation. If you want to always come from whatever direction it is at the moment, you can see it's keeping that. If that is something that you want, like I said, if you want to have a light coming from this direction and just want to move it a little bit, but you don't want it to be extremely rotating all the stuff, you can do that. And same thing for brightness. If you want to get it closer or farther away, but keep the brightness it has, you can toggle this on to have the same brightness. See, right now it's pretty bright for this because I kept the brightness and it looks pretty bright like it is. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's say that we want like a window kind of view. Also, the other thing before I move on to that, you can also control your light, of course, in the old way, or the other way that we could before in Houdini, which is going to this menu and looking through the light, which in this case is light 1. You can look through the light, lock this, and move your light around. Move your light around and position it wherever you want it, right? If I want to have my window like in this section, I can do that. And that still works for lights. In this case, I'm just going to try to do it with the new functionality. So let's say I want to have some light coming from this direction. This light is really intense. So I don't know why I'm changing the intensity again. So let's change it to exposure. And let's say I want to have it be about 3 meters away. And I want it to be lit from this side. I mean, again, I'm forcing myself a little bit to use this mode, but you don't have to. Let's make the exposure a little bit brighter. Let's go to camera 1. This is something like what I like. So let's now toggle shadow mode, and let's keep the orientation, and let's click on this guy and click over here. Let's click here. There we go. So I want something like this. I want my shadows to be going in this direction. So that was pretty simple to set up, but I still want light in front of the scene, something like that. So just by doing that, I have something really simple that I want. Let's do maybe another light. Of course, you are the artist here, and you can do as much as you want. You can do very cool lighting, better than me, of course. So with light 2 here, I want this to be in specular mode. I want to have, let's say, specular on this guy right here. This is sorry, I have the keep orientation locked, and it was looking weird. Like you see, I'm getting this kind of weird areas here because the light is locked. So I'm gonna keep remove orientation, so I can have specular what I wanted. Let's just put it over here. So I want more specular on top of these guys over here. I don't want the intensity to be that high, so let's bring it a little bit down. And I'm sure I did the wrong thing there because I want to control exposure, not intensity. So I don't want it to be that intense. Just put it like that. Let's see what I did in exposure. Yeah, the exposure of this is pretty high, but I want it to be pretty high because let's say that the sun is directly coming from the window. Of course, you can do this all while looking at the Karma renderer and modify all these things in this way. See, this is exactly what I want. I want a light that is coming in this direction with my shadows here, my long shadows. So again, if I want to modify this light in shadow mode, so shadow mode is Shift F, If I want to modify my shadows, I am rendering with Karma and I can still do this. It's really interactive really quickly if I want longer shadows. And I can see the result right away here. I kind of like this. It's pretty nice. And it's great to really experiment so quickly with this. What if the shadow was going in this direction or this direction or going in the other direction? What if the window was on this side? So yeah, I like this a lot. I really like how you can just shape your scene so quickly, but just looking at the camera, not going away. What I used to do before is just have two viewports, one for moving stuff and one for for looking at the result. And now you can basically do it in the same viewport here. You don't have to have different things for them. And now let's go to this other light, and I want to change the specular to be here. I don't see it here, so maybe it's because I reduced the intensity. And yes, it is. You see, now I have the specular there. It's working, and I can see it here again. I can change the intensity of it. Of course, now I did it very, very harshly, but I can change it here and see it in real time, basically. Not in real time, but in render time, how it's working with this. And I can turn that light on and off to see what it's doing. And yeah, I like what it's doing over here. Maybe the intensity, it's a little bit, again, I changed the intensity by mistake here, but I'm gonna leave it like that. It's good for now. But yeah, you can see really quickly with those tools in the lights, you can make your lights do very nice things really quickly and just set up your lighting really nicely. You can just click one, create one light, tweak it on the viewport, create another light, tweak it on the viewport, really, really quick. Also, don't forget that if you right click here in the viewport, you have some parameters here, keeping the orientation, the brightness, change it to the exposure, but also you can hide and show or deactivate some objects. In this case, I click on this pared, which is the wall. If you want to hide that, for example, you can do that right there just by right clicking. If I want to solo some geometry or solo a light, but we'll see in using the light mixer how we can solo lights and work with lights in a different way. All right, that's it for exploring lights.